Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Fantastic Four versus the X-Men, number 2 in a 4-issue limited series. The cover is by Jon Bogdanove, inked by Terry Austin, and this is almost like as if it were a panel follow-up to the first issue's cover. And Wolverine's got some dialogue in this one after threatening Reed Richards in the cover to the first issue. Your mother's been avenged, kid, okay? And you can see on Franklin's face, he's not okay with it at all. So this is a really intriguing cover. I like some of the techniques that Terry Austin is using in the inks as well. This little wavy thin line there for suggesting this foggy background behind Wolverine. And then we have the really nice spotting of blacks on this silhouetted figure of a grinning Dr. Doom, and also a use of screen tones here on the side of Sue Storm's costume as well, and one side of Reed Richards' extended elastic arm, stretched arm as well. Yeah, it's very good. I like the colouring too. Whoever it's by, my guess would be Glynis Oliver because the palette is like hers. And we have different heads in the corner box from the first issue. So we've got Johnny Storm and She-Hulk from the Fantastic Four, Magneto, and Kitty Pryde from the X-Men. So let's open this one up to the splash page. That is a hell of a splash page. That is really, really cool. Title of the story is Truths and Consequences. The creative team down here: Chris Claremont, writer; Jon Bogdanove, penciler; Terry Austin, inker; Glynis Oliver, colorist; and Tom Orzechowski, letterer. So Bogdanove really doing a great job on this issue. Can really see his John Buscema influence in some of these pages. There's one big splash image coming up after this that really shows his Buscema side. Made me think, as I was going through this issue, that Bogdanove and Austin would have been a good team to take over the art duties on Fantastic Four after John Byrne left. But then I remembered who actually replaced John Byrne for a while on Fantastic Four after he left, and that was John Buscema, and you can't book competition like that. So this picks up from the end of the previous issue. Reed Richards has tested his machine, which is a potential cure for Shadowcat's predicament after the mutant massacre, where she's unable to hold her body together in phased form. She's in permanent phased ghost-like form, and her molecules and atoms are getting farther and farther apart. So at some point she's going to die. And Wolverine here, when Reed Richards says he can't do the job, you came here to save Shadowcat Richards. Look at all the saliva pouring out of his mouth as well. Now do it, or I'll send you home in a box. So really great dialogue from Wolverine, but I really like the captions as well in Claremont's third-person narration. His name is Wolverine, and he is not someone to have as your enemy, as Reed Richards, leader of the Fantastic Four, is now discovering. That's a good opening too. And I like what Glynis Oliver has done here in the art. We have these jagged red lines around Wolverine as he threatens Richards there up against the Fantastic Four's jet plane. Really, really good stuff. This is an eye-catching splash page. Great work. And now Bogdanove pulls the camera back. We get 3 horizontal panels on this page, and you get to see all the players. So we see where Wolverine has Richards pinned up against, it's actually the gangplank of the jet plane. Storm running over, Wolverine, stop, let him go. And Magneto suggesting, I'll separate them, Storm. But the Thing, who's distrustful of Magneto, because of course Magneto's reputation until very recently is as a supervillain. Maybe you will, Magneto, he says, but since every time I ever saw you, you were a world-class crook, maybe you won't. Why take chances? So he slams his hands together, and the shockwaves generated stun Magneto and push Storm closer to Wolverine. So she grabs Wolverine's forearm in order to stop him stabbing Reed Richards with those killer adamantium claws. Wolverine, she yells. That's a really great sequence. It's so well told in the visuals by Jon Bogdanove, and Claremont wisely, keeping the dialogue short and sweet so that it doesn't drag against the action sequences. More horizontal panels, full page length horizontal panels from Bogdanove. 4 on this particular page. Johnny was punched in the gut by Wolverine at the end of the previous issue. He's coming to. He's getting his head together. Holy cow, now he's after Reed. He thinks to himself, I knew it, because he didn't trust the X-Men, who are in the current continuity, an outlaw band. So Johnny starts to transform into the Human Torch, like the way that's rendered in this particular panel. Flame on, he yells, and then he sends a ball of flame shooting towards Wolverine, but it accidentally catches Storm in the arm. I'll singe Wolverine's whiskers. He thinks to himself, that should scare him away from Reed, and then it all goes wrong. As I fired, Storm fell in the path of my flame. I burned her, and you can see that he didn't mean it at all. Rogue, seeing what's happening, she was working on the Blackbird. What the devil's going on, she thinks. Storm's down, looks hurt bad, and Wolvie's near berserk. Better do what I can to put a stop to this before it gets any more out of hand. So she grabs the thing, and she kisses him. And you can see in the sequence of panels there what happens. Rogue's powers to absorb the psyche and memories, and powers if the person she touches physically has any powers. And so she absorbs the thing's strength, but also his rocky appearance and blue eyes. And you can see she's shedding a tear there. So what's going on? Well, we do have to go to the narrative captions for this. And we get really beautiful prose by Claremont. Her kiss surprises Ben Grimm with its tenderness, its desperation, yearning for true affection that too painfully mirrors his own. For Rogue is as trapped by her body as the thing is by his. And this mockery of human contact is all she is allowed. With this kiss, indeed, with the slightest touch of her flesh to another's, Rogue temporarily absorbs that person's psyche and powers. Instantly, as her body is flooded with the thing's awesome strength, her awareness is filled with the totality of his being, all he was and is, and dreams despairs of being. She thought she'd be attacking a toad. This is a great line coming now. Instead, she's touched the soul of a prince, and that's why she sheds that tear. Really, really great sequence, and you can tell that in Claremont's notes on who the thing is, that he has the soul of a prince. He's a good-hearted man. Really good stuff, despite his monstrous exterior. Meanwhile, the Human Torch is stopped in his tracks by Psylocke's telepathic onslaught. We have her distinctive signifier of her telepathy there, this butterfly form that signals that she's using her telepathy. Here she arrives in physicality on the scene of what's going on here. You can see Moira MacTaggert is bandaging Storm's arm. It's like battlefield medical attention being given to Storm, and still Wolverine is attacking or trying to attack Reed as Reed pulls away from him, and She-Hulk is coming to Reed's aid. This is a really nice panel. She grabs Wolverine by the arms, and she thinks, let me see what's going on here. Oh yeah, Psylocke is getting into Wolverine's head in order to get him to stop fighting. And that gives She-Hulk pause. An X-Man helping us, she thinks. But Wolverine says, or rather exclaims, Richards dealt this hand. I aim to make him play it through to the end. And here in the background, it looks, well, it's Franklin who's peeping out from the inside of the Fantastic Four's jet. He's not there physically, he's there in his astral form. And Psylocke communicates to She-Hulk. She-Hulk, his rage is too extreme. I cannot hold his mind. And she responds, any more than I can hold his body. And she thinks to herself, Shorty's like an animal in a snare. He'll tear himself apart to break loose or force me to really hurt him. So Wolverine is going berserk at Reed Richards. That's a great shot there, a great cartoony shot of Richards' flesh around his mouth being knocked to one side by Wolverine's kick in the jaw. It's good stuff. Really great work by Bogdanove on this series and on this issue. And you can see Franklin in his astral form. He's running towards his father. Please don't hurt my papa, he says to Wolverine. But he's gone because he isn't really there. The costume figure of Franklin Richards that appeared in Scotland is really an astral projection of the sleeping lad back home in the FF's New York headquarters. However, and I like this piece by Claremont, as so often happens when you're asleep, a leap made in dreamland has rude and painful consequences in reality. So he falls off his bed, face first, and he's there, great lettering by Orzechowski, ow, ow, ow. In comes Mother, and she grabs her child, And then Franklin explains to her, Mommy, it was a special dream. So it's one of his dreams where he's astrally projected. It was with Daddy far away, where he went to help the X-Men, only he wouldn't help them. Why wouldn't he, Mommy? Aren't they our friends? The X-Men got mad, and I love this. And Mr. Wolverine hit Daddy, and Uncle Ben hit Mr. Magneto, and Uncle Johnny burned Storm with his fire so bad she screamed, Mommy, and I tried to stop them, only I couldn't, and then I fell down and woke up and he's crying. So she comforts the child, tells him Daddy's on the other side of the ocean, Honey Bunch, there's nothing we can do, but I'll radio the plane to make sure everything's fine. But Franklin is adamant it won't be ever again. And this is a follow-on from his dream, his special dream, at the beginning of the first issue. This is a great shot here. The mother and child. I'd say that Bogdanove used some photo reference for this. Looks really good. And Sue thinks, oh baby, will you ever forgive me for this crazy life I brought you into? If not for those horrible cosmic rays, we'd be a normal family and you wouldn't have to suffer. So, oh well, I'm glad you found friends your own age in those power children. I wish you had a normal childhood. That's a reference to Power Pack. A normal existence to go with them. I wish. And then she leaves him sleeping in his bed with his teddy bear. I'd never opened that book. And that's Reed Richards' journal from when he was a student at PhD candidate at State University, or a professor there rather. You warned me not to, she thinks, and he did in the first issue of the miniseries. I should have listened, she says as she picks up the book. You said it would destroy the Fantastic Four. And I love this reflection in the window of the Fantastic Four from the very first issue in their original costumes, and the Thing in his original form, and then Reed is separated from them. Look how he's behind the skyscraper there, separate, and looks more menacing, because this miniseries is throwing open questions about what Reed knew about those cosmic rays in advance of going up in the rocket ship in Fantastic Four #1. So she flings the journal at the reflection in the window. You may be right. Seized suddenly by a fury too great to be contained. Okay, that's a nice cliffhanger for the page turn. Let's see what she does. This is wild what she does next. Susan Richards lashes out with her invisible force field. Reed Richards, she yells, how I hate you, ripping off her Fantastic Four costume. So she's completely naked there in the middle of the force field, but just how enraged she is. And so we're wondering, look, what is it that she's read in that journal? Well, we're going to find out by the end of this particular issue. And then the scene switches to Mur Isle. And earlier this morning, just prior to the FF's arrival, Dazzler and Longshot found a fisherman adrift on the open ocean and brought him here to the nearest best equipped infirmary. So here we've got Dazzler, we've got Longshot, we've got Havoc, and this is the fisherman. They fished out of the Atlantic Ocean, but we knew there was something up with him in the previous issue, and it turns out there is indeed. He is an automaton, and he's calling in to his operator. Presence discovered, subject identified as Friedlander Sharon, senior nurse. So this is Sharon Friedlander, a character who first popped up in New Mutants, Chris Claremont's New Mutants, when it was drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz. Mission of compromise, says the robot, initiating defensive procedures to safeguard, probe, and eliminate potential threat. So is Sharon going to be shot by this robot? Sharon doesn't like the sound of that, and likes it even less when the continually metamorphosizing creature turns her way. But we're not going to see what happens next, because the scene switches to outside, and now Moira gets in between Reed and Wolverine, and we see a Glynis Oliver trope here where the background is colored red. It's a signifier of impending violence or violent emotion. Moira says to Wolverine, you want Richards, Wolverine? You'll have to kill me first. And then Storm gets into the middle of it too. She-Hulk here holding back Wolverine. She says, and I also, my friend. So Wolverine sheathes his claws. And Storm says, this should not have occurred regardless of the provocation. I apologize. And Reed responds, not necessary, I understand. And now Storm says, I will beg if I must, Dr. Richards. Only you can save Shadowcat. And he replies with that big bruise on his cheek. from the punch he got from Wolverine. Believe me, Storm, if I could help, I would. And Rogue here, having absorbed Ben's powers, says to heck with him. We don't need his permission. I'll simply touch him and learn everything he knows, including how to run a stupid gizmo. But Storm pushes her back, and this is good stuff from Claremont. Proper ethics and morality. No, Rogue, every fibre of my being cries out to take what we require, which is why we must not, though it costs the life of one we cherish. So Reed continues apologising, and Storm says, that's cold comfort, the apology. Now arrives the trio of Havoc, Dazzler and Longshot. I like the piece of dialogue from Longshot. Who should we hit? I like the way he's running too, kind of cartoonish style of running. So Storm says thoughts appreciated. Or sorry, Moira says that, but there's no need to fight. The fight's over and done with. And Reed wants his equipment loaded up. And then there arrives the robot. And spotted by Longshot first of all. And the robot reveals unit non-combatant, mission non-hostile. So nothing bad happened to Sharon. Shifting to holographic communications mode, says the robot. And now, who is the operator of the robot? Greetings to you, X-Men, and to you, Reed Richards, my oldest of rivals. Okay, so it's Doctor Doom. Now get ready for this. Get ready for the page turn here. And it's lovely that it is a page turn. So we get a real impact from this splash of Doctor Doom. Look at that. That's amazing. That's really good stuff. And you can see what I talked about earlier at the beginning of the review video, the John Buscema influence on Jon Bogdanove here. It's very plain. And also the Kirby crackle around Doctor Doom. Like, this is an image of Doom that could come straight out of the 1960s, but it looks cool. It looks fresh. I like it. And the dialogue here of Doom, you know, Claremont, the first time he wrote Doom in relation to the X-Men was Uncanny X-Men 145, and he has a good handle on Doom's character, so the dialogue rings true for Doom. My apologies for this uninvited intrusion, Doom, ever courteous, and for the deception practiced upon you by my scam bot. I had heard, X-Men, of your recent troubles at the hands of the Marauders, and was curious to separate fact from rumour. More importantly, I wish to determine whether or not this attack on you posed any threat to my interests. So, learning of your presence on Morale, I sent this construct to reconnoiter Dr. McTaggart's facility. So there you go. That's what's going on, at least according to Doom. Love this shot here where we're in a reverse top-down angle, so we can see the holographic image of Doom as he talks and continues. In the process, I've become aware of young Shadowcat's predicament. I believe I may be of some assistance, he says. I can duplicate Richard's research and construct his molecular reintegrator, and with it, save the child's life. So Storm gets it. For what price? Okay, you get an offer from Dr. Doom. What's the quid pro quo? He replies, would that matter? However, no price was mentioned, none shall be. Wolverine skeptically asks, you're doing this out of the kindness of your heart, eh? And Doom replies, my reasons, little man, are my own, and my offer should speak for itself. So he's given the X-Men something to ponder, and Reed instantly grabs Storm by the elbow and says, Storm, you can't, you mustn't. Dealing with Doom is akin to striking a bargain with the devil. And she replies, rather smartly, whatever the X-Men decides, Richards, it's no concern of yours. You've been asked to leave, please do so. So he's aghast. That's really conveyed there in this particular shot of him. Listen to me, he says. Doom says there's no price, but you'll be forever in his debt. Who knows what that will cost you? And Doom is just watching proceedings, saying nothing more, not adding to his offer, not polishing it in any way. He's just probably enjoying the fact that Reed is making no progress here. So Moira steps in, grabs Richard by the shoulder and says, this is Kinross land and I'm the Kinross heir. If you aren't airborne within 5 minutes, I'll see you arrested for trespass and assault. So She-Hulk says, she's serious, Reed. He continues to plead. He says, Dr. McTaggart, please. But Moira is adamant, you've done enough today. For the love of heaven, man, just go. So Doom is happy with all of this. When you reach your decision, X-Men, you know where to contact me. And he's gone. And the Fantastic Four are gone too. And you can just see Reed going up the gangway there and his shoulders slumped. So he's gone. And Moira says, I never thought I'd say this about the Fantastic Four, but good riddance to bad rubbish. Storm passes out from the burns she received. So they got to get her to the med lab. And this is an interesting little piece here. What about this robot? Well, Magneto says, I'll reconfigure Doom's mechanoid into a conveyance to carry her to the surgery room. So what happens now is there's a rush to get Storm into the surgery room. And that's where Kitty is in the background. And she's thinking, Storm's hurt. And I saw Doom make his offer on the security monitors. I want to live, but not if it costs the X-Men their souls. Maybe it's time I took the decision out of their hands. So what does she mean by that? Now the scene switches to Four Freedoms Plaza. The Fantastic Four have arrived home again. Reed is in despair still. What have I done? What's wrong with me? He thinks he's really, really lost his confidence in himself. He sits back here exhausted into his chair in front of his computer. He's thinking about the molecular reintegrator machine. Theoretically, he thinks the reintegrator is precisely what Shadowcat needs. Her examination data supported that, yet something, an instinct, made me hesitate. So what's that about? There has to be an answer, he thinks. Why can't I see it? So there's a puzzle to be solved for Reed Richards, but what is the answer? Meanwhile, a big rocky hand grabs him and flings him against the wall. Slam. Another great shot there. This kind of cartoony elasticity on Reed's face, really rendered very well by Bogdanove and Austin. How you doing, Stretch, old buddy, old pal, says the Thing, ironically, sarcastically. Working hard as always, huh? Saving the world. Ain't you the saint? I seen your book, Reed. This stinking journal, he says, but I'm an old-fashioned traditional kind of guy. I want to hear the story from your lips, Reed, to my face. Look how mad he is. I want the truth. Really great sequence there. So now we're coming to it. What's in the journal? What is revealed about the original rocket launch, the bathing of the quartet with cosmic rays? What are we going to learn? So Reed here says, it seems like everybody's made up their minds about him. Sounds to me like the jury's already in on this kangaroo court. And the Thing says, if that was so, you wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be breathing. So that's quite the statement. Reed says, Sue, I thought this was between you and me alone. And she replies, remember how angry she was earlier? The Fantastic Four have always been as much family as Team Reed. The others deserve to hear the truth. And this is the truth, he says as he holds the journal aloft. And she replies, this is a really nice 3/4 profile shot of Sue. And notice how she's not in a Fantastic Four uniform. She's already taken off the uniform, and that in itself is an implication. You know where to begin, she says. She destroyed the uniform earlier, but she hasn't put on another one after that outburst of anger. So that's the point, really. So he begins reading from the journal. Interesting where he starts to read from. Although not a geneticist myself, he says, my readings of the work of Charles Xavier convince me of the fundamental soundness of his theories that the human race is fast approaching an evolutionary watershed akin to the historical transition from Neanderthal to Cro-Magnon. At the same time, my recent encounter with the extraterrestrial intelligence Gormu, when combined with similar reports from across the globe, leads me to the inexorable conclusion that such contacts can only increase in the future. Thus far, we have dealt with individual beings. What will happen when humanity meets a hostile alien state? How will Earth defend itself? So this is very much a comic of the mid-80s. In the wake of the work of writers like Alan Moore in particular, who made a career and a splash in superhero comics in the 80s out of asking the question, what if superheroes existed in our world? And kind of treated the superhero mythos and the superhero genre from a sci-fi perspective, thinking out logical consequences of superheroes in the real world. And we can see Claremont responding to that here in this particular story. Another device of Alan Moore's in the early to mid 80s was the device of everything you thought you knew before is turned on its head or turns out to be a lie. The super big twist happened. He used it in Swamp Thing, and he used it in Miracle Man, Marvel Man, and of course in Watchmen as well. So we're going to see Claremont do his little version of that here in this miniseries as well. And notice how we're going back to the origins of the Marvel Universe, which of course is Fantastic Four #1, 1961. But even the monster stories that Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and Steve Ditko were doing prior to that. So he's really thinking about the Marvel Universe and thinking about its origins and doing an Alan Moore-esque take on all of that in this particular miniseries. And then the scene switches to Mur Isle. Wolverine is working off his anger here, smashing up the seaside rock, and it's because rocks are here. Richards isn't. You meditate your way, girl, he says to Rogue. I'll meditate mine. And that Glynis Oliver trope there of the red background for a moment of violence. So Wolverine not calm. And now the scene switches later to Moira's house. Look at all the work that Bogdanove has done there with the interior design of Moira's house. And I love the detail even of, in the background here, an ancestor with a big bushy beard. There, a portrait of him on the wall. So the debate is to take Doom up on his offer or not, and the X-Men are divided on the question. And Dazzler is the one who's most skeptical. She says, this is crazy. He's the most evil and dangerous man in the world. How can you even think of accepting his offer? And Logan says, when he's the only game in town, Dazzler. And she responds, a rated game, Wolverine, with marked cards rigged totally in his favour. And of course, Dazzler's right. But then we get a parallel scene taking place in the Fantastic Four headquarters, where the First Family are also in debate and quarrel as well. And Reed here isolated on the other side of the sofa here with the journal, the red journal in his hand. And he says, just because some of this is true, like what's written in the journal, doesn't mean the whole book is. So we're wondering, we readers who are, who are fans of Reed, Mr. Fantastic, and skeptical that he could have committed some major sin, are wondering, what does it mean when he says that the whole book isn't true? Is it a blessing or a curse? He goes back to reading from the journal. I wonder, having not merely a superior intellect and insatiable curiosity, but the wherewithal to make even my wildest dreams reality. I've devoted my life and almost the entire fortune bequeathed me by my father to an experimental rocket project. And we see the blueprint designs there in the background. That's nicely done. Nice color hole there for that. 1980s technique in advance of computers. So that mankind may meet any other starfaring race, he says as he reads from the journal. Not on the surface of our homeworld, but in the neutral territory of space. And now we get Bogdanove's. This is so interesting. We get his version of panels, originally drawn by Jack Kirby in Fantastic Four #1, and the most famous one of coming at the end of it, where the Fantastic Four is born. But read now in the text from the journal, we're getting new information over those familiar panels. Disaster. The government wants me to postpone my flight. My spacecraft, they say, contains too much radical and untested technology. They require more tests before approving the launch. Don't they understand? I've already tested every element of both design and construction far more comprehensively than they ever could. I fear if I accept this restraining order, the delays will never end. My rocket will never fly. And this is so far so familiar. My best friend, ace test pilot Ben Grimm, will handle the controls. My fiancée, Sue Storm, and her kid brother, Johnny, insist on accompanying us as well. Brave, noble souls. There are none like them in the world. Reed closes the journal, speaking softly now from memory. The liftoff was perfect, but then we found ourselves bombarded by cosmic rays that penetrated my shielding, the shielding of my spacecraft as if it was non-existent. And then they're irrevocably changed, but we'd gained considerable powers, become more than human. Of course, the Thing, horrified by his transformation into a rocky monster. We pledged ourselves to use those fantastic abilities for good, and so the Fantastic Four was born. As I said, so far, so familiar. The argument is continuing on Mur Isle. Dazzler making her case. But basically what happens here is, when Dazzler asks, if any of you were in Shadowcat's position, would you take up Doom's offer? And Rogue says, if you're drowning, sugar, does it matter who throws you a rope? Logan says, of course it does, Rogue. That's the point. Question is, what matters more, Kitty or us? And then we're back with the Fantastic Four. Love the evocation of the distance between Reed and his family and friends. Their body language there. Johnny comforting her sister. She-Hulk comforting herself. And the Thing looking out the window. Really, really good stuff. So now Reed continues. And here's the Alan Moore twist that Claremont is playing with. That's the way things happen, Reed. The way it was, or so we've always believed. Everything you thought was true is turned on its head. And Reed continues reading from the journal. Among the growing number of terrestrial enhanced power beings are certain to be a proportion manifesting antisocial tendencies, supercriminals. And while it is logical to assume some similar beings will devote their energies to pro-social activities, that process might be facilitated by a person or group who would serve as both inspiration and example to the rest. It's a great panel here. Love the use of the screen tone as well. Really, really nicely done by Bogdanove and Terry Austin on this page. And Reed continues reading from the journal. We, Fantastic Foursome, will play that role. The genetic structure of myself, Ben, Susan and Johnny are such that, when combined with a precise dose of cosmic rays, all of us will manifest extraordinary physical abilities to that end. I've shaped the whole of my spacecraft to capture and focus the specific radiation required for our transformation. So that's what Sue read and what prompted her fit of anger, tremendous anger earlier, and why she ripped off the Fantastic Four uniform. And we can see Johnny's shock there, She-Hulk as well. And what's the Thing's reaction? He's silent so far as Reed continues to read the journal. I dare not ask their permission. Susan and Johnny are too young and Ben too hot-headed. They would not understand. They might well refuse. And the stakes for the future of the world, the human race, are too high. So Ben now speaks. You did this to us on purpose. Makes sense. Explains a lot. Like, why us and not any of the other astronauts who came after? Always wondered about that. Used to laugh sometimes about how my big brain buddy could overlook something as basic as cosmic rays. Guess the joke's on me. So Reed protests, Ben, you don't believe this, do you? For heaven's sake, I couldn't. And Ben picks up his coat. Give me a break, Reed. You know something was right. You know something was right and necessary and not do something about it no matter what the cost. I know you better than that. So Ben believes that Reed really did that, really made that decision, made the choice for them. And of course, this has resulted in Ben spending years in this monstrous appearance that has, in some regards, ruined his life as he sees it when he's in some of his darker moods. So he takes Sue's hand and he says, wish I knew what to say. Oh, Ben, she says, I wish I'd never found that book. I got wishes too, Susie, he responds. But wishes are for kids because they believe they'll come true. I'm a grown-up, I know better. As he puts on his hat and walks out the door. And look at Reed, look at the body language, it's so good. Shoulders slumped again, head slumped forward. He just calls plaintively after him, Ben. He's getting no comfort from these. Johnny's gonna go. I gotta go, sis. I've got a whole lot to think about. I'll be at Alicia's. Don't know if I'll be back. She-Hulk walks away saying nothing. And you, Sue, you started this, says Reed. And look again, the separation between them. He's on the other side of the sofa. Will you go or stay? Turn the page. We don't get her decision. Instead, the scene switches back to Mur Isle. And the conclusion of the debate on whether to take up Doom's offer or not. And I love the choice here to have us looking out from the hearth of the fireplace. I'm making this decision for myself alone, says Storm. She's the team leader. It is in no way binding on the rest of you, she says. So is Logan going to back her up? Because these two are the heart of the X-Men now. Great spotting of blacks as well. Great lighting here in this particular panel. Storm here continues and says, I know the risks, but Kitty's very dear to me and I would bargain with the devil himself to save her. And I shall, she says. Not you, not alone, you won't, says Wolverine. Love the detail of him lighting his cigar with the twigs here. You're in, darling, so am I. That's good stuff. And then the rest of the X-Men too. Me too, boss, says Rogue. And Psylocke says, I believe I speak for all of us who are new arrivals to the X-Men. We stand with you, Storm, to the end. But where is Dazzler? Is this supposed to be Dazzler here, or is it Moira? I'll go with it's supposed to be Dazzler, maybe. No, that's Dazzler. Sorry, that is Moira, and that's Dazzler. So Dazzler doesn't say anything. But yeah, the X-Men are resolved. They're gonna take Doom up on his offer. And look what's coming up next, by the soul's darkest light. So things are going to get darker before the conclusion of this really great miniseries. So there you go, issue number 2 of the 4-issue limited series. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments section. I think this is great stuff by Claremont. Really, really interesting. Of course, we know there's going to be a happy ending, but things are getting very dark. It's very good stuff. Let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. Really helps the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.